Failure. It's a word that stings, a word we often try to avoid, hide, or minimize. Yet failure is not the end of the road. In fact, it can be the very beginning of something powerful. Every successful person, every admired leader, every great innovator has faced failure. What sets them apart is not luck or perfection, it's resilience. The ability to rise, to learn, and to grow stronger because of, not in spite of, what went wrong. This audiobook is about that resilience, not as a lofty idea, but as a practical skill. Something you can build, something you can strengthen, no matter where you're starting from. We will explore what resilience really is, how it shows up in your habits and mindset, and how to develop it in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Whether you're dealing with a personal loss, a professional disappointment, or the quiet weight of unmet expectations, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not powerless. Resilience doesn't mean pretending things are fine. It means facing the truth with courage and choosing not to be defined by difficulty. In the pages ahead, we'll talk about the real work of bouncing back, about how you train your mind, your habits, and your heart to respond to adversity not with avoidance, but with intention. We'll draw from stories, from science, and from life. You'll hear examples that inspire and suggestions that you can actually use. And as you listen, I hope you'll reflect. What struggles have shaped you? What inner resources have you underestimated? What version of yourself is waiting on the other side of your next challenge? This isn't just a guide, it's an invitation to engage, to grow, to reclaim your strength. Let's begin this journey not by wishing struggle away, but by recognizing that within it there's power, there's insight, and most importantly, there's a deeper version of you waiting to emerge. Chapter 1. Redefining failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. This might sound like a motivational slogan, but it is also a truth grounded in reality. When you think back to some of your proudest achievements, chances are they were preceded by uncertainty, setbacks, and learning curves. Failure isn't a dead end, it's data. It shows you what didn't work, so you can get clearer on what might. And it is in this reframing this decision to look deeper that transformation begins. Seeing failure not as something to be ashamed of, but something to be examined, means you are giving yourself permission to grow. It becomes a catalyst, not a curse. The most resilient individuals are not those who never fail, but those who know how to interpret failure through the lens of wisdom rather than self-criticism. Yet many of us carry deep fears around failure. We link it to our worth. We fear the judgment of others. We internalize mistakes as proof that we are not enough. But what if failure wasn't a personal verdict? What if it was simply feedback? A stepping stone? When you start to see failure not as evidence of inadequacy, but as a natural part of growth, everything changes. You stop hiding from effort. You stop aiming for perfect, and you start daring greatly. Resilience begins with this mindset shift. To be resilient is to allow yourself to fall without labeling yourself a failure. It is to give yourself permission to be imperfect while still moving forward. In doing so, you reclaim power from the fear of falling short, and you create space for courage to take root. You begin to recognize that strength is not the absence of struggle but the persistence through it. Failure invites us to examine our expectations. Too often, we create mental scripts of how things should unfold. When reality doesn't match, we treat it as a disaster instead of a detour. But growth rarely follows a straight line. It zigzags, it pauses, it retraces. Redefining failure means loosening our grip on those rigid expectations and allowing room for the unexpected. When we expect messiness, we're less likely to be derailed by it. Think of failure like a forge. It applies pressure and heat, revealing our weak spots not to shame us, but to shape us. A blade becomes sharper through the fire. So do we. Without moments of failure, our edges remain dull. The lessons stay superficial. But when something breaks, We learn what must be rebuilt with more intention, more clarity, more care. There is a kind of alchemy in this process, a way of turning breakdowns into breakthroughs. This perspective doesn't mean failure feels good. It doesn't. Disappointment, frustration, even heartbreak, these emotions are real. But they are not the whole story. They are chapters, not conclusions. And like any chapter, they move the story forward if we let them. If we stop resisting the pain and start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Then the pain gains meaning. It becomes purposeful. Imagine a child learning to walk. They fall constantly. But never once do we say, this child is a failure. We expect the falls. We encourage the attempts. We celebrate progress. That same compassion must extend to ourselves. The adult version of falling isn't a defect, it's part of the process. To redefine failure is to shift from shame to support, from punishment to patience. We also need to look at the stories we've absorbed about failure. Society often rewards perfection and punishes mistakes. Schools, workplaces, and even families can make failure feel like a final judgment. But look closer. The people we admire most often have the deepest scars. Their strength was forged not in smooth sailing, but in storms survived. Resilience is not about pristine perfection. It's about carrying the lessons of adversity with grace. One way to build resilience is to rewrite the internal narrative around failure. Instead of saying, I messed up, try, I learned something important. Instead of, I failed, try, that attempt didn't work, what can I try next? These subtle shifts create space for growth. They remove the sting of permanence from failure and restore a sense of agency. They invite us to see ourselves not as static beings, but as works in progress. It also helps to remember that failure looks different for everyone. For one person, it's a lost job. For another, a failed relationship, or a project that didn't take off. Resilience doesn't compare wounds. It honors each one, and it recognizes that bouncing back is not always fast or clean. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's messy. And that's okay. When you redefine failure, you also redefine success. Success is not avoiding all setbacks. It's staying engaged despite them. It's continuing to try. It's standing up one more time than you fall. The most resilient people aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who keep reaching, learning, adjusting, and believing. They are the ones who redefine success as the willingness to continue. Failure can be a mirror. It reflects not just the gap between where you are and where you hope to be, but also what you value most. When something doesn't work out and it hurts, the pain tells you this mattered, and that's worth honoring. Failure exposes not only what went wrong, but what is deeply important to you. It invites clarity. It helps you see what truly matters. Sometimes failure doesn't come from doing something wrong. It comes from growing out of the old version of yourself. You may realize the dream you were chasing wasn't truly your own. And in the aftermath of disappointment, there's an opening. To ask bigger questions, to shift direction, to pursue something more aligned with who you are now. This is how failure becomes evolution. Failure can also be a great revealer of strength. It's one thing to have confidence when things are going well. It's another to hold on to your sense of worth and hope when they're not. In moments of collapse, we discover our capacity to endure, our ability to rebuild, our strength to start again. There is something noble in beginning again, something deeply human in the willingness to rise. Redefining failure also involves learning to sit with it, to let it be uncomfortable without rushing to escape it. Many people cope with failure by immediately moving on, distracting themselves, or minimizing the impact. But what if you gave yourself time to grieve, to process, to let it hurt, but not harden you? That space allows for true integration. The lesson isn't just mental, it becomes part of your emotional wisdom. Think of a tree growing in a windy place. Its roots reach deeper into the soil, seeking stability. Its trunk thickens, its branches bend, but don't break. That's you. Every challenge, every failure forces you to root deeper, to become more grounded, more resilient. Your story isn't written in moments of ease. It's shaped in the hard chapters, the ones you didn't ask for, but navigated anyway. The ones that cracked you open and taught you something real. Failure doesn't erase your potential, it reveals where your growth is waiting. It tells you that the road you're on is real, meaningful, and worth continuing. So when failure visits you, as it inevitably will, don't see it as a signal to stop. See it as a checkpoint, a moment to pause, reflect, and recalibrate. Ask, what did I hope for? What actually happened? What matters most now? These questions don't erase the pain, but they give it purpose. They turn hurt into healing, setbacks into stepping stones. Resilience begins not in the big comeback, but in the quiet decision to try again, to trust that you are not broken, just becoming, and that failure, far from being the end, may just be the invitation to grow into something stronger, wiser, and more deeply alive than ever before. This is the hidden gift of falling down, discovering that you can and will rise again. Redefining failure requires you to engage with your past differently. Instead of avoiding memories of your biggest mistakes, revisit them with gentleness. Ask yourself what you were trying to achieve, what mattered to you at the time, and how you've grown since then. Sometimes the past carries pain not because it defines you, but because it was never properly understood or processed. Healing begins when understanding replaces judgment. You can also develop a habit of micro-recoveries. These are the small moments when you reset quickly after a stumble. A tough conversation, a disappointing result, or a mistake at work doesn't need to define your whole day. Pause, reflect, breathe, and re-enter with presence. Building this capacity for quick recovery strengthens resilience in daily life and prepares you for bigger setbacks. Redefining failure also calls us to support others differently. When we normalize talking about our mistakes, we create spaces of trust and authenticity. We lead by example. You don't need to present yourself as flawless to be respected. In fact, your vulnerability can be your greatest source of influence and connection. Being real is more powerful than being perfect. We also need to give ourselves permission to start over more than once. Resilience is not built on the illusion of the flawless comeback, but on the reality of repeated efforts. Every time you begin again, you gain wisdom, not just endurance. You learn how to treat yourself with more compassion, how to detach from shame, and how to find clarity in chaos. Over time, you may even become someone who welcomes challenges because you trust in your ability to rise. Let yourself sit with failure as a companion, not a curse. When you treat it as a teacher instead of an enemy, you open the door to profound growth. The uncomfortable truth is that we often learn more from what goes wrong than from what goes right. Failures strip away illusion. They reveal the flaws in our strategies, the gaps in our thinking, and sometimes the truths we've tried to avoid. That honesty can hurt, but it also heals. In a society obsessed with speed and winning, embracing failure can feel radical. But slow, thoughtful progress is often more sustainable. Resilience is not sprinting through setbacks, it's learning how to breathe through them. It's choosing not to abandon yourself when things fall apart. It's showing up for your life, again and again, even when you're tired, discouraged, or unsure. So take a deep breath, stand tall, and know that your stumbles don't diminish you. They deepen you. They shape your character. They prepare you for the road ahead. Because failure is not the opposite of success. It's the soil in which it grows. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Resilience. Resilience is not a trait you either have or don't have. It is a process, a set of practices, patterns, and perspectives that can be developed over time. The myth that some people are just born resilient while others are not is deeply unhelpful. In truth, resilience is learned, shaped, and built through experience and intentional effort. And that effort starts in the mind. Resilient people are not immune to pain. They feel fear, doubt, disappointment, and frustration like anyone else. But what sets them apart is their relationship to those emotions. Instead of being consumed by them, they engage with them. Instead of identifying with failure, they separate what happened from who they are. They understand that setbacks are experiences, not identities. Think of resilience as a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And, like any muscle, it needs tension to grow. It is not developed through avoidance, but through action, through meeting life's challenges head-on, rather than dodging them. Each moment of adversity becomes an opportunity for growth. Every emotional wound becomes a site for self-discovery. The discomfort you feel in these moments isn't a sign to turn back. It's a sign that you're stepping into transformation. This doesn't mean seeking out hardship for its own sake. It means seeing hardship as a call to deepen, not shrink. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start to ask, "What now? What can I do with this? What is this experience trying to teach me?" These questions are the scaffolding of resilience. They allow you to move from victimhood to ownership. They shift your story from one of being acted upon to one of consciously acting, despite the difficulty. At the heart of resilience is mindset. Carol Dweck's concept of the fixed versus growth mindset is particularly relevant here. A fixed mindset sees abilities as static. You're either good at something or you're not. A growth mindset sees them as dynamic. You can improve with effort, feedback, and learning. When it comes to resilience, a growth mindset allows you to see struggle not as a personal flaw, but as a necessary part of evolution. If you believe that struggle is shameful, you'll avoid it. If you believe that struggle is useful, you'll engage with it. This single shift in belief can change how you meet challenges. Suddenly, every difficult conversation, every disappointment, every failure becomes an invitation to evolve. It reframes the inevitable pain of life as something meaningful, as something you are equipped to handle and grow from. Another critical element is emotional regulation. Resilient people don't suppress their feelings, nor do they let their feelings rule their decisions. They build the capacity to name what they're feeling, fear, anger, sadness, without being hijacked by it. They create space between emotion and action. In that space lies freedom. In that space, your most grounded and conscious self can step forward. Let's say you get rejected for a job you really wanted. A common, automatic response might be, "I'm worthless. I'll never succeed." That thought triggers shame or despair, which can lead to giving up or spiraling. But if you pause and observe the emotion, "I feel crushed. I feel discouraged. I really wanted that opportunity," you begin to separate the emotion from your sense of self. You treat it as information, not as identity. That is the foundation of resilience. In that space of self-awareness, new choices become available. You can choose to rest, to reflect, to try again, to seek support. You are no longer reacting out of panic or pain. You are responding from a place of grounded clarity. The more often you practice this pause, the stronger your ability to recover becomes. Each moment of self-regulation becomes a moment of reclaiming your power. Resilience also requires perspective. When we are in the midst of difficulty, it's easy to catastrophize, to believe that things will never improve, that we are stuck forever. But perspective reminds us that what feels overwhelming today may look different tomorrow. It reminds us that healing is not always visible, but it is happening. Imagine a tree during winter. Its branches are bare, its growth is invisible, but underground, life continues. Roots strengthen, energy is stored. Resilience is like that, quiet, patient, often unseen. It's what allows you to weather the storm and blossom again in time. And much like the tree, You do not need to prove your growth every day for it to be real. Another aspect of resilience is meaning-making. Humans are story-driven beings. We try to make sense of our experiences through narrative. Resilient individuals are able to construct stories that empower them rather than trap them. They find purpose in their pain. They ask, how can I use this? Who might benefit from what I've learned? This doesn't mean sugarcoating hard things. It means holding both truth and hope at the same time. It means acknowledging the reality of your suffering, while also choosing to believe in the possibility of growth. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, famously said that meaning is what allows people to endure the worst of conditions. When life has purpose, pain becomes bearable. Building resilience also involves relationships. No one bounces back alone. Connection is a powerful buffer against adversity. When you are seen, heard, and supported, your capacity to face hardship increases. Cultivating friendships, community, or even just one trusted person can make all the difference. Resilient people are not afraid to reach out. They ask for help. They share their struggles. They lean into vulnerability, not as weakness, but as strength, because they know that authenticity builds connection, and connection builds resilience. It's not about needing to be strong alone, it's about being strong enough to know when you need others. Rituals and routines also support resilience. Daily habits like exercise, sleep, journaling, meditation, or meaningful work become anchors in times of uncertainty. They remind you that even when everything feels chaotic, you can still return to yourself. These habits are not just about productivity, they are about restoration and grounding. They are the quiet. Self-talk plays a critical role as well. Resilient people develop an inner dialogue that is both honest and compassionate. They don't deny their flaws, but they also don't berate themselves. They speak to themselves as they would a friend, with care, encouragement, and patience. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes intention. But over time, self-kindness becomes second nature. And that gentleness becomes a cushion when you fall. It allows you to recover faster because you're not wasting energy on self-punishment. You're using that energy to heal and begin again. You're nurturing the parts of yourself that need compassion, not criticism. One final aspect to highlight is flexibility. Resilience is not stubbornness. It's not rigid persistence at all costs. It's the ability to adapt, to shift direction when needed, to reevaluate priorities, to respond to new information. It's being rooted and yet responsive, grounded and yet open. Imagine a reed in the wind. It bends but doesn't break. It moves with the storm but returns upright when it passes. That's the essence of resilience, not resistance, but response. Not toughness in the sense of hardening, but strength in the sense of enduring. Not ignoring reality, but working with it. To deepen your resilience, you must train your nervous system to handle stress without becoming overwhelmed. Breathwork, grounding techniques, and mindfulness are not just buzzwords. They are proven tools to regulate your body and bring calm to your thoughts. A deep breath, taken with awareness, can be the bridge between chaos and clarity. When practiced regularly, these simple habits build your capacity to stay present even when life feels unsteady. Reflection is another powerful tool. At the end of each week, take time to ask yourself, what challenged me? How did I respond? What did I learn? What can I do differently next time? These moments of introspection allow you to track your growth and fine-tune your inner responses. They remind you that you are capable of learning, adjusting, and getting stronger through life's inevitable discomforts. Resilience is also built by celebrating small wins. Each time you face something hard and don't give up, acknowledge it. Each time you speak your truth, set a boundary, or choose rest over burnout, count it as progress. These acts may seem small, but they are the bricks that build an unshakable foundation. Over time, you realize that you've become the kind of person who can trust yourself in adversity. So how do you begin? You begin with awareness. You begin with the willingness to see your struggle as part of your story, not the end of it. You begin by choosing one small act of courage each day, a conversation, a boundary, a step forward. And as you do, resilience grows. And as you build resilience, you begin to notice something else. Your world expands. You take more risks. You dream bigger. You become someone who can walk into the unknown, not without fear, but with readiness. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you, but by how you choose to respond. And that choice, made over and over again, becomes your superpower. Remember, you don't build resilience by avoiding life's challenges. You build it by walking through them with intention, self-compassion, and a belief in your ability to learn and adapt. You may not control what happens to you, but you can shape what happens next. That power, the power to choose your response, to act in alignment with who you wish to become, is the true essence of resilience. Resilience doesn't guarantee that life will be easy, but it ensures that you will rise again and again, with deeper wisdom, with greater strength, and with a heart still open to what's possible. It's in this space where honesty meets hope, where struggle meets strength, that you build the resilience to become not just who you were, but who you are capable of becoming. That's where the true work begins, and it's work worth doing. And when you embrace this process, not just once, but repeatedly, you'll discover that resilience doesn't just help you survive, it helps you evolve. It becomes not just how you get through life's hardest moments, but how you become more fully alive because of them. Chapter 3. Rebuilding after setbacks. Setbacks hurt. They shake us. They remind us of our vulnerabilities and challenge our sense of progress. But beneath the sting of disappointment, they also carry an invitation, a call to rebuild, not just what was lost, but to build something wiser, stronger, and more aligned. Resilience lives in that rebuilding process. When life knocks you off course, the first step is not to run or to fix. It is to pause, to acknowledge what happened with honesty. There's a difference between acceptance and resignation. Resignation says, "It is what it is," with a tone of defeat. Acceptance says, "This happened, and now I get to choose how I move forward." That choice, though simple in theory, often requires courage. Courage to sit with discomfort. Courage to face what went wrong. Courage to admit that you don't yet have all the answers. There's a quiet kind of power in naming your setback without judgment. Instead of labeling yourself a failure, you begin with facts. I didn't get the job. The business didn't work out. That relationship ended. From there, you allow yourself to feel without trying to rush past it. The pain, disappointment, even anger, they are all valid. Ignoring these feelings doesn't make them disappear. It only buries them, where they continue to shape your choices in subtle, unconscious ways. Once you've given space to emotion, reflection becomes the bridge to healing. Reflection is not rumination, it's purposeful, constructive inquiry. What contributed to the setback? Were there warning signs? Were there moments of courage you overlooked? Where did you abandon your needs or boundaries? This is not about blame, but about clarity. Clarity that can inform your next steps. Rebuilding requires vision, but not necessarily the same vision you had before. Sometimes setbacks happen because we're misaligned. We're pursuing goals that aren't truly ours, or we've been measuring success by someone else's standards. In those moments, the best question isn't, "How do I get back to where I was?" but "What does forward look like now?" This is where reinvention begins. After the dust settles, you might find that the setback cleared space for something better, something that fits who you are becoming, not who you were. Maybe a failed job interview nudges you toward a career path that excites you more. Maybe a relationship ending teaches you how to choose yourself with greater integrity. These aren't silver linings meant to minimize pain, they're lessons drawn from it. One of the most powerful practices in rebuilding is starting small. After a setback, confidence often takes a hit. You doubt your abilities. You question your instincts. That's why small wins matter. They rebuild not just momentum, but belief. A single positive conversation, a short workout, an email sent. These tiny acts remind you that you're still in motion, that your identity is not static, that you are capable of rising. In the rebuilding phase, it helps to define what you value most now. What matters to you in this season? What are you willing to work for, not because you should, but because it deeply resonates? When you align your next steps with your values, you create a foundation that is both firm and flexible. You're no longer rebuilding just to regain what was lost. You're building in a way that's better rooted. It's also important to manage expectations. Growth isn't linear. Some days will feel empowering, others might feel like regression. But setbacks after setbacks don't erase your progress. They refine it. Think of it like sculpting. Each time the chisel hits, the form becomes clearer. Rebuilding is not a straight road, it's a spiral. And each loop brings you deeper into your strength. Support is essential in this process. Don't rebuild in isolation. Talk to people you trust. Seek out mentors, friends, coaches, anyone who can hold space for your truth without trying to rush your recovery. Sometimes just being seen and heard can rekindle your own belief in what's possible. You don't need people to fix your problems. You need people who believe in your ability to rebuild. And as you rebuild, it helps to revisit your narrative. What story are you telling yourself about this setback? Is it a story of defeat or one of rebirth? Rewriting your story doesn't change the facts, but it changes the meaning. And meaning is where resilience grows. Try this. Instead of saying, "I failed," say, "I learned something hard and I'm choosing to grow from it." Instead of saying, "I lost everything," say, "I lost what no longer fit and I'm discovering what truly matters." Language has power, and how you speak to yourself shapes how you move through the world. Rebuilding also means staying connected to your future self, the version of you who is on the other side of this experience. What would they thank you for doing today? What would they encourage you to let go of? What habits, relationships, or beliefs would they want you to carry forward? When you imagine your future self with compassion and strength, you create a guide, a reason to keep going, even when the path is unclear. Eventually, you'll notice that what once felt like ruin now feels like raw material, that you're not putting broken pieces back together, but creating something entirely new, something more honest, more aligned, more resilient. The beauty of rebuilding is not just in the result, it's in who you become through the process. A person who is more self-aware, a person who listens more deeply, who dares more boldly, who trusts more wisely. That's the quiet triumph of resilience. It doesn't just return you to who you were, it reveals who you truly are. The rebuilding process also challenges your relationship with patience. In a world conditioned for instant results, allowing time for real healing can feel uncomfortable. You might feel pressure to get over it or to move faster than your spirit is ready. But rebuilding asks for something slower, more intentional. It invites you to move at the speed of wisdom, not urgency. During this time, even rest is part of the process. Taking a walk, journaling your thoughts, or simply sitting in silence are not wasted moments, they're restorative ones. They allow your inner system to reset, to breathe, and to prepare for what's next. You're not avoiding the climb, you're gathering strength. Sometimes, you'll also find that rebuilding means setting new boundaries with others and with yourself. Perhaps you realize that certain environments no longer support your growth, or that certain voices drain your energy. Rebuilding is about protection, too, not as a wall, but as a wise filter. You choose what gets in, you choose what stays out. As the process unfolds, reflect on your routines. Are they helping you rebuild? Even small rituals like making your bed, preparing a healthy meal, or reading before sleep become anchors. These habits reintroduce a sense of normalcy and control. They are not trivial. They are the bricks that hold the structure of your new life together. Be mindful, too, of how you measure your progress. Not every win will be visible to others. Some of the most meaningful milestones are deeply internal, how you speak to yourself, how you show up with integrity, how you make aligned decisions when no one is watching. This quiet resilience, practiced consistently, creates a powerful inner shift that no one can take from you. And while the process is personal, its impact often reaches outward. The strength you gain from rebuilding becomes a quiet inspiration to those around you. Your courage gives others permission to confront their own setbacks. Your resilience becomes a shared light in a world where everyone, at some point, must learn how to begin again. So keep going. Even if the steps are small, even if the road is uncertain, keep choosing to return to yourself with honesty and care. Keep asking the deeper questions. Keep aligning your life with what truly matters, because each act of rebuilding is an act of self-respect and ultimately of self-love. Rebuilding after a setback is not just about recovery. It is about revelation. It is about becoming. It is about stepping out of the shadow of what went wrong and walking toward the truth of who you are, becoming resilient, whole, and deeply alive. The journey won't always be easy, but every step taken with intention adds to your strength. In the end, you'll look back not just at what you survived, but at the new story you wrote with your own hands, day by day, choice by choice, with courage and care. That is the essence of true resilience. That is how you turn pain into purpose and setbacks into strength. And finally, remember, rebuilding is not a solo performance. It's a conversation between your past, your present, and your potential. Let each version of you contribute. The one who struggled brings depth, the one who endured brings grit, and the one you're becoming brings vision. This collaboration of self is what resilience is truly made of, a union of all your experiences crafted into strength. And in those moments when doubt resurfaces, as it inevitably will, remind yourself of how far you've come, not just in distance, but in depth. Rebuilding doesn't guarantee that you'll never stumble again, but it does mean that you're now equipped with a deeper understanding, a steadier heart, and a greater trust in your own ability to rise. Let your scars be not symbols of defeat, but emblems of survival. Wear them with pride. They mark the places where you refuse to give up, where you learn to begin again. And as you keep walking, remember, every setback contains the seed of a stronger comeback. And perhaps most importantly, understand that rebuilding isn't about speed, it's about alignment. Even if your progress feels invisible to the world, it matters deeply. Each time you rise, you reaffirm that your future is worth fighting for. And in doing so, you become a quiet force, not flashy, not loud, but unwavering. You become someone who knows how to begin again, not just once, but every time life demands it. That is resilience in its truest form, the steady, soulful return to yourself, no matter how many times you've been broken open. Chapter 4. Habits that build resilience. Resilience isn't just a mindset, it's a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is shaped by habits. Simple daily practices that reinforce your ability to bounce back from adversity, remain grounded in uncertainty, and stay rooted when life attempts to uproot you. These habits are not grand or dramatic. Most of them are quiet, consistent, and deeply personal. But over time, they build the foundation of a resilient life. One of the most powerful habits is reflection. Not just thinking, but structured, intentional reflection. This might look like journaling at the end of the day or setting aside 10 minutes in the morning to ask yourself, what did I learn yesterday? Where did I struggle? Where did I show strength? Reflection helps you create a dialogue with your own experience. Instead of living reactively, you begin to live with awareness. You begin to notice patterns where you thrive, where you fall short, and where you can grow. Reflection is the habit of self-leadership. It teaches you to take responsibility, to adapt, and to act with wisdom rather than impulse. Another essential habit is self-care. But let's redefine that. Self-care isn't just about bubble baths and spa days. It's about protecting your energy, preserving your mental health, and honoring your physical body. It's about sleep, not just getting enough hours, but protecting your bedtime as sacred. It's about food, not dieting, but nourishing. It's about movement, not for aesthetics, but for vitality. And it's about rest, not just collapsing at the end of exhaustion, but creating intentional pauses that allow your nervous system to recover. When your body and mind are replenished, you're more capable of facing setbacks, making decisions, and staying centered in chaos. Gratitude is another daily habit that builds resilience in subtle but powerful ways. When practiced consistently, gratitude retrains your brain to notice what's working. It's not about ignoring what's wrong or pretending everything is fine. It's about creating balance. When life is hard, gratitude doesn't erase the difficulty, but it expands your perspective. It reminds you that even in pain, there is goodness. Even in loss, there is love. A short morning or evening gratitude practice, writing down 3 things you're grateful for, can shift your emotional state, build psychological resilience, and deepen your sense of connection with the present. Connection, too, is a cornerstone habit. We are social beings, and resilience grows in the context of relationships. You don't need a vast network, but you do need depth. 1 or 2 people who truly see you, who hold space without judgment, who remind you of your strength when you forget. Make a habit of reaching out. Don't wait for crisis to connect. Send the text. Make the call. Ask someone how they're really doing. Community isn't built overnight. It's built through micro moments of presence. And the more connected you are, the more resilient you become, not because others fix your problems, but because you remember you're not alone in facing them. Another vital habit is intention. Starting your day with a moment of clarity, asking yourself, what matters most today? What energy do I want to bring into this day? What is one small step I can take towards something meaningful? When you act from intention, your day has direction. You're less likely to be tossed by distractions or overwhelmed by the noise of the world. Intention is a compass. It reminds you of your values. It keeps you focused not just on what you're doing, but on who you're becoming. Boundaries are also habits, though we rarely think of them that way. Setting and honoring your boundaries, whether it's limiting time on social media, saying no to draining commitments, or carving out time for deep work, are resilience habits. Boundaries are not walls to keep the world out. They are filters that protect what matters. Each time you reinforce a boundary, you reinforce your worth. You remind yourself, my energy matters. My peace is valuable. My well-being is worth defending. A habit often overlooked in resilience is celebrating progress. We tend to measure success in milestones, but resilience is built in the moments between. When you acknowledge small wins, a completed workout, a difficult conversation navigated with grace, a day without giving into fear, you affirm your efforts. This creates a positive feedback loop. You start to trust yourself more. You see that your actions matter, that you're not just surviving, but slowly, steadily building something real. Creativity, too, can be a resilience habit. It doesn't have to be painting or poetry. It might be cooking, dancing in your living room, writing a paragraph in your journal, or making a playlist that lifts your spirit. Creativity reconnects you with play, with possibility. It helps you process emotion without needing to articulate everything logically. It gives expression to your inner world. And when life feels heavy, even a few minutes of creative flow can offer lightness and release. Mindfulness and meditation are also core resilience habits. These practices train your attention. They create space between stimulus and response. Even 5 minutes of mindful breathing can calm your nervous system, lower stress hormones, and create the clarity needed to respond rather than react. Mindfulness isn't about becoming someone new, it's about coming home to yourself, about observing your experience with compassion rather than judgment. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to stay grounded even when everything around you feels uncertain. One habit that underlies all others is consistency. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about returning over and over again. Even when you've fallen off, even when you don't feel like it. Resilience is built in the act of recommitting, not in never breaking, but in always returning. To the habit, to the vision, to yourself. And finally, perspective. Resilient people make a habit of zooming out. When something goes wrong, they don't just ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this teaching me?" They shift from victimhood to agency. This doesn't mean they bypass the pain, but they don't stay stuck in it. They look for growth. They look for alignment. They look for the version of themselves that can emerge from this season stronger. Sleep also deserves special mention. It's not just rest, it's repair. A lack of quality sleep affects every system of the body: mental clarity, emotional regulation, physical healing, and decision-making. A habit of honoring sleep as essential, not optional, sets a tone of respect for your own needs. Protecting your sleep routine is a foundational act of resilience. In the same way, cultivating curiosity helps keep the mind flexible. When facing stress, curiosity allows you to ask, "What else could be true here? What haven't I considered?" This opens the door to problem-solving and possibility rather than panic. Curiosity makes you adaptive rather than reactive, and it brings lightness into moments that feel heavy. Reading, learning, and personal growth are also vital resilience habits. Feeding your mind with wisdom, insight, and new perspectives stretches your inner world. It reminds you that you are never stuck, that knowledge and growth are always available to you. Even a few pages a day can shift your mindset and help you meet the world with more courage. Humor, too, is worth cultivating. Laughter eases tension. It reconnects you to joy. It offers perspective and relief in moments when life feels too serious. A habit of finding the funny, the absurd, or the delightful, even in hardship, builds emotional elasticity. Compassion, especially self-compassion, is another cornerstone habit. When you treat yourself with kindness in moments of failure or stress, you reduce internal resistance. You allow space to try again. Self-compassion isn't letting yourself off the hook, it's giving yourself the grace to grow. Additionally, purpose can be cultivated daily. Not everyone has one grand purpose, but each of us can infuse meaning into ordinary tasks. Doing your job with care, showing up for loved ones, investing energy in something bigger than yourself, these all feed the soul and sustain long-term resilience. Spirituality, whether expressed through faith, nature, or a sense of connection to something larger than yourself, can also act as a powerful resilience habit. It can provide comfort, meaning, and perspective during moments of doubt and despair. Making space for spiritual reflection, however that looks for you, can bring deep emotional fortitude. Forgiveness is another often overlooked but potent habit. Holding on to resentment or guilt weighs you down. Forgiveness isn't about excusing harm. It's about releasing the hold it has on your energy. It's about reclaiming your freedom from past wounds and making space for peace. And don't forget the resilience habit of rest, not just sleep, but purposeful disengagement. Breaks throughout your day, time to sit and do nothing, walks without your phone. These spaces of stillness are fertile ground for integration, for healing, and for deeper insight. In a world addicted to doing, choosing stillness is a radical act of self-respect. Together, these habits form a lifestyle of resilience. They don't make life easy, but they make you stronger, steadier, and more self-aware. They help you show up for your life with more clarity, more courage, and more compassion. And most importantly, they remind you every single day that resilience is not something you wait for. It's something you practice. So, as you move forward, ask yourself, what habits support the life I want to build? What practices bring me closer to the person I want to become? Start there. Keep it simple. Stay consistent. Because in the end, it's the daily choices, the ones no one sees, that shape the resilience everyone admires. And remember, the habits you choose today are not just actions. They are votes for the future you want to live in. They are quiet promises to your future self. When practiced with intention and heart, these habits do more than help you bounce back. They help you rise higher. They become the framework through which you evolve, not by accident, but by conscious, deliberate design. Chapter 5. Real Stories of Resilience. Sometimes, the best way to understand resilience is through the lives of others. Resilience isn't just an abstract idea, it's real, it's human, and it's visible in the choices people make every single day. When we hear or read stories of resilience, something shifts in us. We feel seen, we feel capable. We remember that setbacks don't define us, what we do after them does. Take Thomas Edison, the prolific American inventor, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Before he successfully invented the electric light bulb, he endured thousands of unsuccessful experiments, yet he didn't view them as wasted effort. To him, each trial was data, each misstep was progress. Edison's resilience wasn't just in his intelligence, it was in his refusal to give up. Or consider J.K. Rowling, who created the Harry Potter series. Long before her books became a global phenomenon, she was a single mother living on government assistance. Her manuscript was rejected by multiple publishers, 12, in fact. She faced discouragement, uncertainty, and financial hardship. But she kept writing, she kept submitting. And eventually, someone said yes. Her story isn't just about literary success, it's about persistence in the face of doubt. But resilience is not limited to famous names. It lives in the quiet corners of daily life. It's the single parent who wakes before sunrise to prepare breakfast, get kids ready for school, and still shows up for work with a heart full of determination. It's the student who studies late into the night after a long shift, driven by dreams no one else can see. It's the person battling illness who still finds joy in a morning coffee or a walk in the sun. These stories don't make headlines, but they embody resilience in its purest form. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply by refusing to give up. Resilience also shows up in people rebuilding their lives after tragedy. Consider someone who loses their home in a natural disaster. Everything familiar is gone: photos, mementos, a sense of safety. But they begin again, one day at a time. They find shelter, lean on their community, take care of their family, and slowly piece together a new version of home. They may cry, grieve, and falter, but they rise again, often with deeper appreciation and a new definition of what truly matters. Then there are stories of emotional resilience, those who endure heartbreak, betrayal, or loss, and still find the courage to love again, to trust again, to open their hearts to the world. Like the widow who volunteers at a shelter, the person who forgives a deep wound, the child who finds laughter again after trauma. These stories show us that healing isn't a return to who we were, it's becoming someone even more whole. Resilience is also in those who take the long road of recovery. The person in addiction recovery who celebrates one day of sobriety, then 2, then a week. The one living with chronic illness, who wakes up every morning and decides to keep going. The refugee who builds a new life in a foreign land, learning the language, working multiple jobs, and holding on to hope for a better future. These stories remind us that resilience isn't about speed, it's about commitment. There are also stories of people who face career failure or financial collapse, only to reinvent themselves. Think of the entrepreneur who poured years of savings into a dream that didn't work out, only to pivot, learn, and launch a new venture with greater clarity and heart. Or the employee who is laid off, and after months of rejection, finally finds a position that fits them better than they ever imagined. These transformations remind us that what feels like an ending is often the start of a more meaningful chapter. There are those who overcome deep-rooted family trauma. People who grow up in environments marked by neglect or dysfunction, who break cycles and go on to create homes full of love and stability. Their resilience is not just personal, it's generational. They are healing wounds that go far beyond their own lifetime, and they are proof that where you come from does not have to determine where you're going. There are also countless stories within communities that rise together. Neighborhoods rebuilding after crisis, schools creating safe spaces for students who've been through hardship, organizations formed from loss, turning grief into purpose. Collective resilience shows us that healing doesn't have to happen alone, that we can rise stronger when we rise together. Resilience is also found in people who choose to stand up for others. Activists who face threats and criticism, yet keep advocating. Whistleblowers who risk their careers for integrity. Everyday citizens who see injustice and speak out. Their resilience isn't always loud, but it is unwavering. And let's not forget the caregivers, the nurses, social workers, teachers, and loved ones who show up daily for those in need. Their work is demanding, often thankless, yet they continue to give, to listen, to support. Their resilience is in the constancy of their care. Your story belongs here too. You don't need a dramatic comeback or a perfect ending to be resilient. Every time you choose to keep going, you are writing a chapter of strength. Every time you face fear and act anyway, you are practicing courage. Every time you fall and get back up, maybe slowly, maybe shakily, you are living the essence of resilience. Sometimes we forget how far we've come because we're too focused on how far we have left to go. That's why it's important to pause and acknowledge your own journey. Think back to a time when you thought you couldn't survive something, but you did. A moment when you felt lost, but found your way. A season of doubt that eventually turned into clarity. You didn't get there by accident. You got there by showing up, by staying open, by choosing to believe in the possibility of change. Sharing your story, even if only with yourself, is part of building resilience. It reinforces your narrative not as a victim of life, but as an active participant in your growth. It allows you to own your journey, to see yourself not just as someone who experienced hardship, but as someone who learned, grew, and rose from it. Consider writing your own resilience story, not for others, but for yourself. Start with a moment that tested you. Describe how you felt, what you did, what you learned. Reflect on who you became through that experience. You'll be surprised by the strength you uncover in your own memories. Remember that resilience doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it looks like tears, like rest, like asking for help, like choosing to walk away from something that no longer serves you, like saying no, like starting again. There is no single image of resilience. It's as diverse as the people who embody it. And sometimes, resilience is contagious. When you witness someone rise, something stirs in you. You remember your own strength. That's why sharing our stories, whether through words, art, or simply by how we live, matters. You never know who might see themselves in your journey. You never know whose hope you might help spark. The stories of resilience remind us that growth is possible, even in the darkest times. That every setback carries with it a potential turning point, that the human spirit is infinitely adaptable and capable. They help us realize that even in the face of chaos, we can create meaning. Even in the midst of uncertainty, we can choose hope. So take heart. The road you've traveled, no matter how rough, is part of your power. The scars you carry are not signs of weakness, but of survival. The fact that you are here, reading, listening, learning, that you're still seeking growth, is a story in itself, a story of resilience in motion. The world needs more stories like yours, not polished, perfect ones, but real ones, honest ones, stories that tell the truth about falling down and getting up again, about doubt and persistence, about fear and courage, about the long, beautiful, sometimes painful road of becoming. Resilience is not reserved for heroes. It's lived by people like you every single day. Let your story remind you, you are stronger than you think, and you're not alone in this journey. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a step in the direction of your own becoming. And if you ever question your strength, remember this. Resilience isn't a destination, it's a way of being. A decision you make again and again to stay open, to keep learning, and to keep showing up. That decision, made consistently over time, becomes the foundation of a life built not just to survive, but to thrive. So, the next time you're faced with a challenge, think back to these stories of public figures, of people in your life, and of yourself. Draw strength from them. Let them remind you of your capacity to adapt, to persevere, and to rise. You carry within you the same potential for growth and grit. This chapter may be full of other people's journeys, but make no mistake, your story is just as worthy, just as brave, just as full of lessons the world needs. Don't underestimate the quiet power of your resilience. Don't overlook the courage it takes simply to try again. Your story is still unfolding, and every day you continue, you add to a legacy of strength that is uniquely yours. And even if no one sees it yet, even if no one applauds it, even if it happens in the quiet of your own heart, know this: it still matters. It still counts, because the hardest battles are often fought in silence, and the bravest choices are the ones we make when no one's watching. So keep going, keep telling your story, keep living your resilience. You are not only surviving, you are shaping a future where courage and compassion lead the way. Resilience is not a finish line, it's a practice, a way of living that acknowledges life's inevitable ups and downs without letting them define your worth. It's the quiet, steady voice that whispers, "I can try again," even after a hard fall. It's the belief that healing and growth are not only possible, but within reach. You now understand that resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain. It's born from leaning into discomfort with honesty, from pausing, reflecting, and choosing action over avoidance. Every time you do that, even in the smallest of ways, you're building strength. And the more you build it, the more it becomes part of who you are. You don't need to be fearless to be resilient. You simply need to show up for yourself, especially when things feel heavy. You need to remember that setbacks are not dead ends, they are detours that often reveal something important about your path, your priorities, or your purpose. The journey ahead won't be linear. Some days will feel strong, others uncertain. But you now carry tools. You've cultivated awareness. You've reframed failure. You've practiced patience. These are not temporary fixes, they are enduring foundations. So, as you close this book, ask yourself, what does resilience look like in my daily life? How will I respond the next time I fall? Who am I becoming through this process? Know this: you have already begun. You've chosen to understand rather than avoid, to grow rather than stay stuck. And that choice alone is an act of resilience. You are not defined by what breaks you. You are defined by how you rise. And today, this very moment is another chance to rise stronger than before.